Hello everyone and welcome to Inside Healthcare. We begin our program with a close look at concussions, in particular sports-related concussions. Did you know that nearly 3,000 Minnesota high school students suffered sports-related concussions during the 2014 school year? With football, soccer, and other youth sports currently underway, a local doctor joins us to talk about what you need to know to protect your young athletes from concussions. And we're very pleased to have with us Dr. Carolyn McLean, a board-certified emergency physician, and with the urgency room and assistant medical director. So thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before we talk about how to protect, maybe we can talk about a little bit about what exactly are concussions. What's happening when you have a concussion?
So a concussion is, by definition, a brain injury. So what that means is that your cells are connected to all of a number of other cells. And when you have a brain injury, those connections are broken. So normally, and they are difficult to explain. So normally how I think about it is I had to get here today from Edina. And the way I normally take is closed because there's a ton of road work. And after a concussion, your brain normally has to do math like 2 + 2. It has a little route, it goes, but now that route's broken and it has to repair that route. So in order, you can still get the answer, but in order to get there, you have to take a different route, which takes you longer and requires more effort. So that's what a concussion is that the normal patterns in your brain have broken down and you need to use different routes to get to the same place. A more serious head injury usually has bleeding in the brain and actual cell death, but a concussion, by definition, you can't see on a CAT scan, you can't see on an MRI. The way you can see it is to see how much glucose uptake the cells are using, but that's a pretty intense test.
And concussions can be from mild to severe, the whole gamut in between.
Yeah, but the interesting part about that is we used to, when I'd see you in the ER, I would say, you have a mild concussion, you have a severe concussion, but we don't know anymore which one's which because time will tell. So let's say you have nausea and a mild headache, and for you, you might have that for 2 months. Well, that's a severe concussion. You have it for 2 months, or you have a really bad headache, you've thrown up, you're off balance, but in 3 days, you're back to your old self. That's a mild concussion. So we can't diagnose that initially in the ER. All I can tell you is, yes, you have one, or no, you don't.
So how do you diagnose someone with a concussion? Especially initially, too, right in the ER.
So normally, the first person to diagnose a concussion is the person that saw the accident. So let's say you're a soccer player, or I just had a goalie who went out to catch a ball and hit the side of the net. So he hit his head, he was knocked out. When I saw him, he just had a mild headache. But he was knocked out. Everybody saw him hit this. And so just by definition, if your brain stopped working, even for 30 seconds, that's a concussion. So
when you're knocked out, your brain is not working?
It's working, you're still breathing. It's working, but it's not conscious. So it's not working as well as it should. And if that's the case, then you have a concussion.
So what advice do you give to coaches, parents, other athletes? What are the signs and symptoms that they should be looking for?
So now concussions are so much in the press that coaches and athletic trainers are doing a great job of noticing. And a lot of these kids, before they actually play sports, they get baseline testing, and then after an injury occurs on the field, they retest them. That's important for us to have some idea of how bad this concussion is. Each sport has a different rule book, which is because we don't know enough about concussions yet. So they kind of pick the evidence that they say, hey, so the NFL uses 8 minutes. You have a head injury on the field. In 8 minutes, if you're completely normal, okay, you can play. But other sports have different numbers. So I can't remember exactly what soccer is, but it's long, so maybe 20 minutes. Say 20 minutes you're playing without your player, that's a long time. Mm-hmm. So they each pick a different number, and that's just because our evidence, we don't know that number yet.
So you look for these signs and symptoms of a headache or confusion?
Yeah, so people feel out of it. The most sensitive is balance. So if their balance is off, certainly you don't want them to play sports right away. If your balance is off, you're just going to get re-hurt. But headache, nausea, you just don't feel yourself. You feel like you haven't slept in 4 days and you can't think straight. Sometimes you can actually see the head injury. If you can actually see a big contusion on the head,
well,
that's a good sign.
Yeah.
But most of the time, the most common thing is that people have a headache. And even if you didn't lose consciousness, if you have a headache after a head injury, that means there's inflammation in your brain. There's a little bit of swelling. And if that's the case, you have a concussion.
Wow. So what kinds of treatment do you recommend for patients that come in with these symptoms and signs and symptoms?
So there's been a lot of literature in the past couple of years about what to do about concussions. And some of it is contradictory. So some says, hey, you shouldn't exercise at all for a few days. Some says, oh, absolutely, you need to walk. There's been some...
That's interesting.
I know, it's frustrating. So there's been some evidence that electronics are really bad after a concussion. And to tell a parent your kid has to stay home, not do anything, be in a dark room, and no electronics. I'm like, yes, that's what you should do, but it's not an easy rule.
Especially for someone who's very active, they're playing sports already to begin with, yes.
So these kids are like, really? I can't text? So the most important thing is to take a break. And what does your brain do? It thinks. So even going back to school and having to sit in class is making the concussion last longer.
Wow. So when should someone go see an emergency physician like yourself? When should they seek medical help?
Anybody who has a significant head injury, if there's a contusion, if they got knocked out, if they have headache and nausea, you want to see someone that sees these all the time that can say, there's no bleeding in your brain. Because what happens is there's been a number of even high school players that they maybe got knocked out, but they looked okay. They didn't go home, they didn't seek medical care, and they died. And so
that would be awful.
Yeah, we recommend at least seeing someone that can tell you you have a concussion and not more than that. To diagnose a concussion, you do not need a CAT scan or an MRI.
Because it just won't show up.
Mm-mm. And you'd ideally avoid the radiation risk with a CAT scan if you can. And how we do that is we do a really good exam. So we have you, the kids are often like, seriously, you want me to do that? But
something very simple.
Yeah, but it's really noticeable.
And then they can't do it, and then they go, oh, wow.
I had a gymnast, and I was like, okay, stand on one foot. She couldn't do it. If you're a gymnast,
you have great balance.
Should be able to stand on one foot.
Yeah.
So those are those things that you want somebody to evaluate you, and then you want them to reevaluate you before you go back to sport to make sure that you can actually complete your neurologic exam.
And we mentioned that you're with the urgency room, and for our viewers that are not familiar with it, why don't you tell us what is the emergency room?
So essentially, the urgency room is a standalone ER. We have everything that an ER has. We're staffed with ER doctors. We have 3 of them. One's in Vadnais Heights, one's in Woodbury, and one's in Eagan. And our goal, we were large group of ER doctors, and the problem with working in the ER is that everybody that's ever been to an ER goes, oh, I have to go to the ER.
Right.
And so we wanted to try to create a place where it was not unpleasant, where you could go to the ER, you could get seen and get in and out within an hour, hour and a half. So oftentimes people will come in with 2 bone fractures of the arm, so both their bones in their arm are broken, and they're in and out in an hour and 15 minutes, even if we had to put them to sleep. Mm-hmm. So it's a really nice place for me to work because people aren't so angry when I walk in to see them, and they're like, it's been 4 hours I've been waiting. So I think we've done a really good job of putting together a place where people can get their emergent needs met. Also, if you do have something that you think, hey, I need to be admitted to a hospital, you still can wait a long time waiting to get seen, and we can see you and then directly admit you to St. John's or United.
Mm-hmm. So unlike an urgent care, you have that higher level of expertise being emergency physicians then?
Yeah, well, and we have the resources. So there's a lot of fantastic urgent care doctors that do not have the resources that we have. We have a CAT scan, we have labs, we have things that they don't have. So for us, it's really great environment to work in.
I think it's pretty cool too on your website too, you can see the wait time, right? You can call it up and see at this particular facility, this is how long the wait is and that.
And usually it's less than we say because you're trying to set expectations a little bit different but most of the time we get people in within a half an hour.
And I know friends have told me that's why they decided to go, because they go, okay, that there's not long of a wait and I'll get seen right away. And so if someone wants more information about the urgency room or about concussions, they can contact, go
We have
to
a
your
website. Yep, we have a website, we have a Facebook page.
And it's at theurgencyroom.com. So final comments about concussions. What should our viewers know about concussions to protect their loved ones? Don't do sports.
I think the hardest part about concussions that I see is that these are kids, especially with hockey, they come in, they have a concussion, and they're a senior. And this is their last season, and it really matters to them.
That is so hard, yeah.
And for me to say, you can't play, is really hard.
But it's so important for their life.
It's important. And so I say, you know what? Be very careful with them, because it's not just the concussion, but while your brain is healing, it's very fragile. So if you have a second concussion while your brain is healing, you can do permanent brain damage. And I love hockey too, but it's not worth it. So that's what I would say is make sure you follow up with your doctor before you go back to play.
Because if you go back too soon, you're at even a higher risk?
Higher risk for long-term brain injury.
Wow.
Yeah, and those are not good. So that's what I would say, and I'm sorry. I know you want to play, but you got to take it easy for a little bit.
Yeah, I had active children that were involved in sports, so I know totally what you're saying.
Yeah. But sports are good for you, and they're good for you on so many levels, and it doesn't happen that often. But if it does, you have to take a break.
All right. Dr. McLean, it's awesome to have you with us.
Oh,
we
yeah,
really
thank
appreciate it. I know you're very busy, so thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you. Still ahead, what's being done locally to protect our environment and our health. So stay with us, everyone.
Something's not right.
My first symptoms were
constant tingling in my toes.
my legs, sometimes they'll go numb.
Had double vision.
They said you have multiple sclerosis.
Well, the beginning is the hardest time.
Kind of had to get a grasp on reality.
I had to adapt and change very rapidly.
I had to learn how to drive with my hands. Yeah, that was interesting.
I was a dancer. I don't see walking the way I walk any different than doing a dance. It just looks different. It's a different dance.
You see me have an off day, it doesn't take away from who I am.
A symptom may cause you not to be able to do that anymore. And at one point, I wasn't able to do any of those.
But I would exercise every day.
Since I've been cycling, it's definitely helped my walking.
To make a lot of changes in my life and
just adapt to it.
I'm going to acknowledge its presence. I'm not going to discount it, but at the same time, I'm going to try my best to not let it stop me.
It's a fantastic opportunity to be working together with a common goal of curing MS, and sharing is the key.
And now we turn our attention to what's being done in our community to improve our environment and our health. And to tell us about one very cool program that brings at-risk students to outdoor classrooms, we're very pleased to have with us Steve Thomforde. He's an ecologist with Great River Greening. Thank you for being with us, Steve.
Thank you for having us today.
So tell us about this program, and the title of the program is called Field Learning for Teens.
Yeah, Field Learning for Teens. We've been doing this program since 2009, and we've engaged 1,100 students since that time. Right,
that's incredible.
Operates in the spring and the fall, and we really cue in on kind of at-risk metro underserved population students, a lot of charter schools, some magnet schools, but a lot of inner city kids, very diverse crowd, ethnic groups and stuff like that. Many of these kids have never had an opportunity to get outside.
That's hard to believe, but yeah, I imagine that it's
right.
true.
Just
yeah.
that, I mean, really, when you live in an urban area and there's a vacant area or an open space or a natural area, they're almost perceived as a scary place. You know, it's like, you know, there's like creepy people that hang out there that do creepy things. So the students will avoid actually going into some of these natural areas.
So how does the program work?
The program works, it's funded through some grants. And we provide everything. We provide busing for the students, so we pick them up and bring them to the site, we bring them back, we serve them lunch, and we spend a couple of hours in the field actually engaging them in a restoration activity.
So what would be like a typical thing that they might do?
That's a good question. Typical thing they might do. So it really takes a teacher out there that wants to do it. A lot of teachers are really uncomfortable moving outside the classroom, especially with some of these populations, the students that we do work with. But every now and then we've all had a teacher like this in our lives, or a couple of them. They're like,
absolutely.
That sounds cool, let's go, gang. And those are the teachers we're looking for. So the bus comes and picks the students up, and they've been prompted with some questions that by the end of the class they're going to have to answer. Some are like, what careers did you learn about that took to make this place happen here today? Right, so we're trying to get them focused a long time. So they get off the bus and they're kind of like, yeah, whatever, you know, and we've got a natural area. It works great for Great River Greening because we do a lot of metro and urban projects, and I'll explain a couple of those in a bit. But anyways, they get off the bus and they meet somebody like me, one of our ecologists, and I explain to them what the site looked like historically. Like back in 1491, there was buffalo and passenger pigeons, and then the railroads came in and leveled everything.
Like
right. And so they kind of get a sense of what it looked like, and I think that's really important, that natural history thing, and what had happened and where we're trying to go. You know, usually these areas, for example, one site right in St. Paul called Trout Brook Nature Sanctuary was a trout stream at one time, and now then it was a railroad bed, and then it was abandoned after the freeways came in. And so it was just abandoned land with shopping carts upside down, and again, creepy people doing creepy, who knows, you know. And so the neighborhood here wanted to return it to the trout stream that it once was. It took 20 years just to get funded for it and the idea launched. But the students came out there and they could see that, you know, what this was. It was really a very beautiful area. And then we looked at the houses and we said, what if you lived there and this was an abandoned area? How would that impact your health? Where people were dumping things and, you know, bugs are all over back in there. The humidity was high. And can you see the vision of the future? And so some of the students are right away, it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. And it's the people, it's not the politicians that are doing this or some highfalutin scientists. It's the people in the neighborhood that really got this going. So we'll introduce them next to kind of some sort of technology, because we really want to get these students involved in technology. And it could be a handheld GPS, global positioning satellite unit.
That is amazing,
right,
isn't
right.
it? Yeah.
And they'll go on kind of a treasure hunt where they punch in coordinates, and then they go to those coordinates and they'll find a little cask, and there'll be some of the answers to their life's question, or at least the questions at the end of the bus ride for them that day, you know, on what we're looking for. And then they'll come back and we'll engage them in actual restoration. And that could be pulling invasive species out or planting flowers and seed. And at this time, they're starting to, now that they bought into the vision, they're kind of starting to do a pretty good job at doing the planting and the pulling out of the seed, picking up trash. We didn't even ask them to do that, but they're like, oh, we picked up this trash. It's like, you didn't have to do that. But so they're getting involved like that. And then we usually break for a lunch. And then we bring out, and I think this is the coolest part of the program, we bring actual mentors that are in the field. These people volunteer their time, come from their office, drive sometimes quite a distance, men, women, they're hydrologists, they're botanists, they're engineers, they're landscape architects, sometimes they're even just people that are into the arts.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, and they'll tell
Sharing
the students,
that knowledge.
right, what impressed them as a kid, what classes they took in school, any questions that you guys would have. You know, the kids are like, what was your favorite class? Or how many years in school did it take you to do what you had to do?
Oh, I bet they were really curious about that, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then they get on the bus and they go back, you know. And a lot of times we'll go back to the classroom and deal with them in the classroom a little bit too. Like,
so is it a summer-long type program?
It actually occurs during the
year-round?
school year, right. It's usually in the spring and the fall. So right now we've had one, actually it was a summer school, okay, for students that were fortunate enough to actually have some summer school. You know, that's an expensive program to run. But now we have 5 more coming up this fall, and we'll have 5 like next spring. So.
And they find out about it through their schools and stuff like that, or?
It's typically a lot of times Great River Greening. Hi, we have this really neat program, and we'll come and pick your students up and bring them out to their ecologist, and what do you say? You know, we'll pay for the whole thing. And like I said, it takes the right teacher to hear about a program like that.
And how many years? You said 10 years, 20 years?
Great River Greening, we're celebrating our 20th year this
Right.
year, and we've always been about community engagement. So we've had 34,000 volunteers in 20 years work with Great River Greening. The field learning for teens has been in inception since 2009.
So are you familiar enough with some of these students to see how they advance after being participating? Has it been life-changing for them?
Some of them have, and it's only in the short term that we really get to know them. We're not doing any long-term studies for all these students, but I can give you 2 examples. One was a girl, 7th grade girl from Laura Jeffries Academy, which is an all-girl academy in St. Paul, and she came out to me, and I'm working with the students, and we're planting wild strawberries, one of my favorite plants, you know, native wild strawberries at the site. And I'm talking to her, and just, you know, she's definitely a minority, underserved community. And all of a sudden she said, when I get big, I want to be a gardener in my community, and I want to grow vegetables to help feed people. I'm like, really? She already had this idea in her head. But so then I really got engaged. Wild strawberry, one of my favorite plants. And I started, you know, like this and that. And she came back the next 4 years, not as a 7th grade student, but now as an ambassador to her class. And her teacher's request, can you come and help out? So I see her as a community leader going forward in the future. And then just this summer, that summer school, we had this program. Here, again, a minority student, a male, underserved class, somebody that you wouldn't think all of a sudden came to me and said, I'm going to be a soil scientist. Do you know anything about soils? I'm like, no, but I like soils. And we started talking about different things. This student, and it's a life-changing event for the student, his teacher, again, the teacher that brought him out to us, took him on a canoe trip this year. This kid had never been in the wilderness, never been in a canoe, was scared to death when he got there. And after that canoe trip, he heard about the program with us. I want to go. Boom, he's out there with us that day. And then he took my name and number on his car. He says, if I have questions, can I call you? I said, please do. Again, we're looking at, you know, maybe some of these people will become leaders of their community. So that's really cool, isn't it?
That is very, very cool.
I think restoration kind of goes in, if you feel like you're helping the land, you know, it builds something in you.
But you're not only helping the land, you're helping our environment, you're helping our health. I mean, what are some of those connections that we may not be aware of, and how that is all connected?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Trout Brook, the actual nature sanctuary in St. Paul that we're working on. It was a dump. It was a abandoned railroad, what do they call it when they have all the trains sitting there? Railroad yard, right?
Yeah.
And it was abandoned, and it was just trees and weeds grew up, and people were dumping stuff. People were probably living back in there. So it was kind of a messy area, and we have a lot of these brown fields in Minnesota.
Brown fields.
Yeah, brown fields. I mean, in urban areas are very common. And how would that make you feel if you woke up next to a brown field every single day, or with a lake that was so severely polluted that you couldn't swim in it, you couldn't eat the fish out of it? And so there's actually degrees right now. I met a girl at another one of these programs that said she was going to go into environmental health. And I said, where? And I think it was Georgia, in Atlanta College down there, are a specialist in environmental health. It's a real program. She's going to work towards
Very
a PhD,
cool.
right? Where the environment that you live in determines a lot of your health. And we always think about smog and toxic soils, but just even what you see when you walk out the door. Is that lake healthy? Is that landscape healthy behind you? So I think that that's one way that the students are engaging, and they see that, yeah, well, I don't have to be in the Boundary Waters Canoe area. I can make my neighborhood very healthy in this way. And one thing that I really see in the future, and we're working on Great River Greening, our staff at Ecologists, we're always trying to do the cutting edge techniques. And one thing that I've been very focused on the past 10 years or so have been reintroducing agriculture into our restoration. Like grazing is a big one for me. And community gardening is part of that too, where we can grow vast quantities of food in a nice area instead of having these truck out in California where they're drought restricted. We can be doing it in our communities where people are meeting each other again and feel like they're doing something good and getting good food out of it. So one of my heroes is a gentleman named Will Allen. He was an NBA basketball player for a while. Big, tall, African American, and he shook my hand. His hands were like this big. He went back to Milwaukee and he said, I'm going to train my people how to be farmers again. And they're growing food for a lot of the Milwaukee schools, and he hires like 200 kids every year to do this. Isn't that cool?
Very
and so
cool.
I see us working in that capacity too, moving in that direction. I would like to see sheep and cattle grazing in some of our bigger areas, and the community gardens connecting some of the smaller areas.
We just have a few minutes left. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Great River Greening. You mentioned the organization as a whole. What about it?
Great River Greening, we started in St. Paul. We're part of the Port Authority and trying to reconnect St. Paul to the river. Again, it was kind of abandoned. There was a barge terminals down there and tank farms where they stored petroleum. And so in a couple summers, we engaged lots and lots of people from the community of St. Paul and planted thousands of trees out there and really made the whole Shepherd Road, Harriet Island.
It's so beautiful. I just drove down it the other day. Yeah.
So that is how we started. And then when it was done, the people that were at Great River Green said, hey, this is really cool. We should keep this going. So they incorporated it as a nonprofit. And to this very day, we're still out doing work throughout the entire state. In fact, if you want to find out more about us and how you can get engaged, and one thing that makes us unique is this community engagement. We want people from the community coming out and doing restoration side by side with us. So they buy into this park. But if you visit our website, we have a bunch of fall programs starting out September 12th is the first one in St. Paul, right next to Summit Brewery, actually. And then we have a variety of other programs that are going on. So I think it's a great year to come out with our 20th anniversary and join in fist to fist, hand to hand, and saving the planet in kind of a way that makes you feel good. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And obviously you just love what you're doing.
I am passionate about it.
Final comments about what our viewers should know about either the at-risk program for students as well as Great River Greening?
I think it's to me it's very unique and wonderful to be working for Great River Greening, and that we're working with these students and empowering them. And I see hope in our future. You know, there's so much pessimistic news out there, but when a boy or a girl wants to be a farmer and this kid wants to be a soil scientist, that sends me back home, and I'm thinking, yeah, there's opportunity, there's hope here in this world. So.
Well, Steve, it's been a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
Really
I've enjoyed
appreciate it and learning all about this, so thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
And we'd like to thank you for joining us. We hope you join us next time on Inside Healthcare. We'll see you then, everyone.